Welcome to Page Turners, a weekly bookish podcast for every kind of reader. Whether you want to explore a variety of genres, tick books off your growing TBR, or simply skip the reading for book club, we've got you covered. That's Liv.
And that's Amy.
Hello.
Hello.
Beautiful weather. Don't know why we're starting with that. It's very classic British of us.
Because we get it so infrequently that we feel the need to comment on it every time.
That is very true. How are you?
Good, thanks. I'm trying to think if there's anything exciting that's happened in my life. I don't think so, which is sad. I think we're all good. Father's Day this weekend.
Yes, yes. Will you be with your father?
I will be, yes. I will be seeing him on Saturday or Sunday. I don't know. I think we're going to cook for them. We're going to cook for both dads.
Ah, right. So everyone's coming.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
It's just easier than having to travel. So yeah, that's the plan.
A real bonus of living where both of your parents live.
True. True. Yes. And nice to spend Father's Day with him now because when we lived away, obviously we didn't get to do it all the time. So it is nice. Yeah. What are you up to this weekend? Something a bit more exciting.
We are going to the Cotswolds. We're going to stay with two of our friends who live down there.
hmm
Just for a little weekend. We go tomorrow, we come back Sunday. Yeah, it'd be nice. My dad and my mum are on a cruise, so it makes it sound as if I'm purposely not spending time with them.
You can phone him.
Yeah, yeah, I've sent a card. That's the very least we can do.
Absolutely. Book news?
Yes, I have some quite unsubstantiated book news.
Oh, my favorite kind.
Is that the right word? Maybe it's not. You'll just have to bear with me. So obviously, big news. Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab came out on Tuesday. One of the major marketing campaigns of this sort of book is that there was going to be even the standard edition was special. Like it had like a little foil naked hardcover and was signed, so she signed all of them
Oh,
in the first
oh
edition,
wow.
the first print run, obviously.
hmm
And a few people have received their pre-orders, and they are indeed signed, but they are not special. They are just regular sort of covers. And, there's been, I wouldn't say backlash because I don't know how seriously you take that, right? Like, because that's clearly not V.E. Schwab's fault. She's clearly signed all of them and that should be applauded. But I think if the marketing campaign wasn't so hard on the fact that it's like every first edition or of the hardback will be special. You don't have to like
hmm
there'll be different options and versions of it and stuff, but it'll still be, there's no standard edition. Apparently, there is.
Okay. That sounds familiar to what happened with you with, and forgive me if this wasn't the right book, Sunrise on the Reaping, right?
That is the correct book, yes. Yeah, that is exactly what happened. Yeah, no, well, actually, you're sort of right though, because the special edition, and anyone not watching can, well, not that watch, but any that's not on TikTok, like, I'm air quoting hard here. There was meant to be an interview with Suzanne Collins in the back, and
Yeah.
there was not, I didn't get anything like that. No sprayed edges, nothing. I was so disappointed, honestly. It was, yeah. Yeah, and I was meant to send it back and it's sat downstairs because I have object permanence and I put it in a box and put it underneath the table to like clear it away and I forgot it was there.
Yeah, that's so standard though. That just gives me the same vibes of when I buy clothes online and think, I'm going to return that. I am going to return that. I'm going to return that. And then the 28-day time scale disappears and you think, oh, I own this now.
Yeah, I wouldn't even mind, but Waterstones have a 2 month return period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm still wondering if I could email them and like sort of be like, look, you sold this to me. Like this is whatever consumer rights I have. This is not what I was meant to get.
no, and to be fair, most of the time, if that is the case, then that time scale doesn't apply anymore. So yeah, you might get away with
Oh,
it. Let's hope so.
My neurodivergent brain really fucking hopes so.
That's interesting though. So was this promised in the sense that there were photographs of it, videos? Like, did you see what it was supposed to look like and then just didn't receive that?
Yeah, I think, and don't get me wrong, I did not receive this copy. Like, it's based on what I've seen in friends and things.
Mhm.
Shout out to Danny. Yeah, basically there was something on V. Schwab's Instagram that was showed you what it would look like. But Illumicrate have done a gorgeous copy of it, so I say a few of us. I'm thinking gonna read it on the Kindle and then buy that gorgeous copy
Nice.
if it's a lush book, which I suspect it might be. But yeah, that's I'm sure we're missing something very important that's also happened, but yeah.
I fear we might be, although we're always behind. So when we call it book news, it's already 2 weeks out of date by the time you get to hear us discussing it. So it's just bookish happenings, things that have happened.
Yeah, maybe we should start calling it that.
Mm.
What are you currently reading?
I am currently reading The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig. I guess romanticy, I think. A haunting, deeply romantic tale of life and death, says Ava Reed. So,
Oh, well,
yeah, it's interesting so far. I like it. She is the 13th child. She's promised to the death god,
cool.
and when she is given to him, she realizes that she is able to heal people, but only if death has not already marked them for death, if you like. When it gets
Okay.
to that point, she needs to sacrifice herself in order to save them.
Right. Okay.
Mm.
Giving me a bit of belladonna, giving
Yeah.
me a little bit of like Hades Persephone vibes.
I think
Okay.
so. I think we've got a bit of a rakish prince. I think we're not really there yet. That's why I'm saying I think it's romanticy because I'm not really getting any romantic vibes yet. But that's my favorite kind of romanticy when it's mainly fantasy and then we get a little sprinkling of something, something. But yeah, so far so good. What about you?
I'm currently reading Oathbound by Tracy Dion.
Nice.
I am 1% in.
So far,
Yeah,
first impression.
I am very glad that we had Oathbound come out before I'd finished Bloodmarked because that's a hell of an ending.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's the most cliffhangery one I've ever read, but I can understand why the elongated time between Bloodmarked and Oathbound was a struggle. So no, I'm glad to be able to just slip right into it. I mean, I've read, like I said, 1%, but it is a big book, so maybe like 2 chapters or something. But yeah, great.
Mhm.
Loving.
Great. And that's not the last one, is it?
No, you and I wrongfully thought it was a
Mm.
trilogy because quads are so few and far between, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
I like a quad. It's a bit different. I like even numbers of books. I feel like I don't know, it just seems to flow a bit better because we do get the second book lull typically in a trilogy. So,
yeah. I wonder which one you would class that as at the quad, like which one? Do you think maybe the third book would be the lull book in a quad?
mm,
Any book
yeah.
before like the whole thing or the climax of the novel happens is
Mhm.
probably the one that is favored the least, I suspect.
I would think so. Yeah. Cool.
Well, right. It is episode 2 of season 4. Amy, what have we read this week?
We have read Song of the Stag by R.M. Brown.
Woo 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 woo! Oh, we don't do that anymore. I'm
We
sorry.
don't independently published.
By Ringwood Publishing, yes, in
Hmm.
indie public. I think Ringwood. Yes.
Yes, yeah, I had a look on their website earlier. Some really interesting things on there. So yeah. I
Uh,
don't think it's the first independently published book we've ever covered in the podcast, is it? But we did say we wanted to cover more. So we've
yeah.
stuck to what we have resolved to do.
R.M. Brown is Scottish.
Yeah, she's from Dundee.
And I also think that this won bear with me. I definitely think it won something. Yep, winner of
Mhm.
Frederick Forsyth's Fiction Award in the People's Book Prize 2025.
Cool. Award winning. Lovely.
Yeah.
So I have some trigger warnings.
Fine.
I could not find them in the book. I couldn't find them on the website. And to be honest, I actually struggled to find them in all the usual places that we typically go to. So I just kind of pulled them together on my own. So please let me know if you think I've missed any. I said violence, languid, death, political conflict, peril, of course,
Right.
emotional trauma, and toxic slash controlling relationships.
No, I think that's great. Yeah. And now, with the trigger warnings out of the way, comes the speedy summary.
It's always that little bit of dread at this stage for whoever's responsibility the speedy summary is for that week. So I empathize with you right
Uh,
now.
well, I can only apologize. Count
No
me
problem.
down whenever you're ready.
Three, two, one, go.
Kate moves from the rural border town in Storren to the big city of Thorntonnock with her betrothed Kenzie to support his career as a member of the Queen's Watch. He is determined to make a name for himself by catching the elusive Fox of Thorntonnock and avenging his parents, who were apparently killed by separatists calling for a free Storren against Afrin rule. Kate stumbles around the city and ends up at a separatist rally where the Fox herself is speaking, and Kate, having experienced some of the misfortune in the city, listens to what she has to say and finds her attention is quite held. Torn between her love for Kenzie and her fascination with the Fox and the fairy tale of a secret heir to Storren's throne, she tells him she thinks her innkeeper Bran is a separatist. Kenzie takes her away to his barracks to stay and kills Bran. Horrified, Kate runs away, joining up with Callan, Jamie, Tavis, and Aggie, aka the Fox, a group of separatists. Aggie tells her they're going to steal the antlered crown of the first king Andras and bring it to his heir. Kate joins, enamored by the idea of the crown and the heir itself. They retrieve the crown and get away, but not before Kate's link to the Watchmen is revealed. Despite being told to stay put by Callan in the separatist hideaway, Kate is brought into their band once more by Aggie and they travel north together to deliver the crown. Before they can get there, they're found by Kenzie and a group of watchmen, also Kate's dad. Aggie is wounded badly and the crown is dropped in the fire to burn away. They get away to Goldstein, where the heir hides, and while Aggie heals, Callan and Kate retrieve the half-burned, mangled crown and coronate Aidan as the second king of Storren. After some watchman interference, Kate voluntarily returns to Kenzie to spy and discovers the first king was not Andras at all, but Cathal, his good friend, making Aidan a pretender as he is labelled by Afrin. Undeterred, Aidan travels to Thorntonnock to attempt to take it. Callan steps in with a less violent plan and they take to the barricades and try to peacefully protest, but the Watchmen kills civilians and shoot first. Callan manages to send out messages to other realms, reaching far and hearing support from his own home saying that they'll stand with him. Another realm is busy deciding when they're set upon, the rebellion failed and Aidan is killed. Our group get away and lie low for 2 months. Aggie is not herself, her desire for revenge consuming her, and she leaves Kate to begin the rebellion again. Kaelin and Kate stay, but agree that they'll try again.
2 minutes 36.
So much happens in this book. Like, towards the end of that, I'm
Um,
pretty sure I just formed it in a little bit.
as I was listening to that, it really stood out to me that I should have probably done that one because there was so many things in there that I was like, yeah, I should have. Sorry, I could have took that one and for the pronunciations. Didn't even think about it.
What
Happens
did
in
I,
this one.
what did I pronounce
It
wrong?
didn't for a while. Like I think it got to the midpoint. No, maybe not even as much as 50%, maybe 38, 35%. And then things just cranked up a notch. And as soon as the crown was delivered to Aidan, I think that's when everything got a bit more complex and lots of moving parts. So I think you did a great job with that. It's tough.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we don't necessarily have different POVs, it's all in third person, but we do follow different characters through different
Hmm.
chapters.
You do.
So we get an awful lot of like, it's great. You get to see the story from all different kinds of angles.
Mhm.
Uh, tell me what I pronounced wrong. Let's start that off first. Let's start off with the apologies.
Well, you did get Callan right. I think you said Kaelin at the end, but no,
Yeah,
that's fine.
Callan, Kaelin, Callan.
Yeah.
Thorntonnock was all right.
Ortonox okay. Yeah. Storen's fine.
Goudston,
I
Goudston.
think so. I don't really know about that one, but yeah. There was a lot of well, actually, there was a lot of mix of old Scots and Gaelic in it too. So the dialogue was great. No, did you? I mean, we're jumping straight in here, not even thinking about first impressions. But did you find it? I'm just thinking for the wider audience who maybe aren't Scottish and haven't had that drummed into them since they were, in like nursery school. Did you find any of it difficult?
There were some words that I was like, okay, I'm not sure what that means. but it wasn't necessarily, I couldn't not figure it out with context clues.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I think Freg, Freg, I realized she says it, Aggie says it to Kate after they've just rescued her from her execution. And I think it means fright, or like, did I give you a Freg? Did I give you a fright?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I thought I was a bit like, oh, okay. But otherwise, no, it's all, I don't want to say it's written phonetically. Like, some of it is, but it's written how it's meant to be written. But I'm trying to figure out whether the few years we've spent here have helped. Like,
Maybe.
I know that I can, is I know, like I've heard it
Mhm.
more than enough. My father-in-law is well, and my mother-in-law, they're both Scottish. So there's words that I heard, like dreek is a
Yeah.
term they use all the time. So I was like, okay, cool. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah.
but your standard English bystander, um I think they
I think with context clues, you could probably work it out. I think she's made it as accessible as she could without, you know, pandering.
oh,
Or
100%. And also
yeah.
single-handedly doing the work of Rebecca Yarros in one book across however many books Rebecca Yarros butchers the fucking Gaelic language.
Yeah. I mean, it was fairly straightforward for me, but I think there is definitely language used there that's maybe not typically used nowadays, or maybe not used by everybody in every part of Scotland nowadays, which is important when we're not trying to generalize the entire country. You know, not everybody speaking like that. But yeah, my dad certainly speaks a lot more like that.
Okay.
So, and
No,
it is drummed out of you. So that was really interesting because there's a part in there where Kate was told off for saying Dreich. And that happened a lot when we were, you know, when you were in school. If you spoke with like old Scots, like if you said Ken in primary school, for example, the teacher would say, speak properly. You know, that's not how you
oh.
say it. So
So
it's not the case anymore because it's recognized as a language and obviously respecting that language and heritage and things. But definitely I could identify with some of those parts in there that Kate was being told, you know, that's not how you say that. So it's
yeah, and it was very well set out that Afrin and sort of the borders, like all those in the borders that had adopted the sort of Afrin culture and customs and almost welcomed it were I think Kate's mum says that people who speak the language are unclever or un like
yeah, unrefined. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It certainly
kind,
seemed
like
like that.
not very
Definitely.
bright, like, and so but it's mad to think that, I know that obviously in school, your school, what we talking, like 27 years ago?
23.
I'm not trying to make you seem really old.
Yeah, when I was in primary school, certainly. It wasn't such a big thing in high school, I must admit. It wasn't really mentioned, but you were taught every year in primary school.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crackers. But even we get it in the book as well, like not just Kate's mum and Kate's mum's influence on Kate, but on Aidan, the king, when he's crowned and then he tries to speak to the crowd, he changes between the two. And he even says to her, like, I'm trying to speak. Does he say properly? I don't know. He says something like that, and it's just that even that inherent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, there's parts of Scotland where they'll have a dialect that would be unfamiliar to me. You know,
Mm,
it's if you go to Shetland, for example, um, it's not, you're going to have to tune in. So it can be stronger in certain parts of Scotland. The Central Belt, probably not as prominent, I wouldn't have thought.
mm. Where do they speak Doric?
Dorich?
Yeah. All right, fuck off, Jesus.
No, Dorich is the place.
Oh, just I was like, oh, just because I didn't roll my R at the end.
Yeah. I know. I get pronunciation right. I like that she said that at one point. She was like, I don't even know how you would attempt to pronounce that. And I was like, yeah, fair, fair.
First impressions wise, because we've gotten a little off track, I just thought it was going to be a good sort of strong sort of fantasy romp. I think we got that.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I enjoyed I mean, there was sprinkles of f fantasy in terms of, well, we don't really necessarily have to have magic for it to be fantasy. We've talked about this before, but there were sprinkles of magic in there. I like that it didn't rely too heavily on it, to be honest.
the only real sort of magic type was Aidan seeing Andras's ghost, right?
No, was it the I can't remember the name of them now. Was it the
Oh,
Talonsayers? They seemed to harness natural magic, but it came at a cost, and if they used it to do anything other than protect the world and the environment, then they lost it. It kind of retreated from them, and they lost the ability to harness it.
Talasay.
Yeah. So I like that. I liked the addition of it. I just felt like when it was used to get them to escape, when they were down at the docks and
Yeah.
there was like a wall of water, I thought, oh, I don't want it to just descend into another, like the magic being the biggest part of the story. But I actually think that the way that it was handled was really clever.
No, I liked it as well, and like very much paying into that magic has a cost, but also
Hmm.
the idea that like it really just nipped in the bud that this wasn't going to become some OP fix all type thing.
Hmm.
Um,
No.
which I really respected because it could have very easily been RM Brown's fail-safe to get them out of any sticky situation.
Yeah,
And to be fair, they have two Talisay and they do use it twice.
we do.
But
We do.
but hey,
They do.
it's not used all the time.
No, not all the time. Yeah, first impressions, I really enjoyed how it started.
Mm,
I liked the pacing at the beginning, for sure. So it had a strong start for me. It gripped me from the beginning. I was really interested. It was different to anything else I'd read.
mm,
So yeah, solid.
yeah, definitely different as well to anything we've read quite recently, I think.
Hmm.
Gave me like a bit of God Killer vibes, and you know how much I love
Yeah.
God Killer.
Hmm. And
So,
we need to mention it at least once in every podcast episode. But no,
yeah.
no, I see what you mean. Yeah, for sure.
Um, let's talk setting because
Hmm.
sometimes setting is a really difficult one to do in this instance where, it's technically based on a real place
Hmm.
and you sort of sometimes people don't like it when people take liberties with that, that it change the geography. And we've spoken about this with Boys with Sharp Teeth.
Hmm.
Some people really had a
Oh yeah,
right
yeah.
axe to grind about the fact that it was set sort of in a real place, but whatever. But so how did you feel about that? Obviously, being the setting guru on the podcast and also having lived in Scotland for most of your life.
I liked it. I had no issue with it. I was a little bit confused where Thorntonnock was. At the beginning, I thought they were going to what was London,
Right, okay.
and then I realised, oh, I think this is supposed to be Edinburgh.
Yeah, no, I got very big Edinburgh vibes
Yeah.
through it.
So I had to go back to the map. I've got the map in front of me just now. And then obviously Broddock was meant to be the borders.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
could see that on the map. So actually, no, I really liked it. I didn't think it was like it made sense. It made sense for the story. I think it was handled pretty well. I had a really strong feeling about what everywhere looked, where everybody where looked. I quite enjoyed that because we went to the Highlands at one point and there was mention of like bothies and stuff. So like I was all for it. I got it. But no, I actually I thought it was really well done.
No, and I mean, not obviously the expert in any means, but no, I thought it was great. I thought it was done really well. Like you said, looking at the map, God, they traveled far to Eadwick, didn't they?
I know, I'm just looking at that now, actually. Um, if you're someone that struggles with fantasy for that reason, actually, like if you are someone that finds it difficult to place the characters, I actually think this book, if you are from the UK, would help hugely because it's quite easy to understand where the characters are supposed to be. You can see what's meant to be what
Yeah, no,
quickly.
absolutely. I completely agree. And I know that we've mentioned we think Thorntonnock's sort of Edinburgh, but it's probably not really,
So
right? It's probably a mix between Edinburgh and Glasgow. The only thing that really solidified it for me was the Town.
yeah, the old town bit, yeah, like the
Um,
underground town, yes.
if
Uh-huh.
anyone ever comes to Edinburgh, which a lot of people do with tourists, etc.,
Hmm.
the only thing I ever recommend people to do is the real Mary King's Close, which
Yeah,
is
it's cool.
takes you in under that bit of the city that was just built upon, and so great, so fucking cool. So that was my some of my favorite bits. The
Yeah, I
Town.
really liked it. I liked the hints to places. I thought it was really effectively done, like the old town, new town vibe.
Yeah.
Like that's very common in, I mean, a lot of cities, but it's a big part of Edinburgh's geography.
For me, it was trying to figure out where everyone else was. So like Tor and Tia, they're clearly like Northern Ireland, Ireland.
Yeah,
And
pretty sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Perneth is Wales, or is it Prilwyn? It should be Prilwyn, right? That sounds more Welsh.
Well, it's the five realms, so I'm thinking there's another realm. There's something else, isn't there?
Well, I think technically, if you look at like think about it, United Kingdom doesn't actually include Ireland. So maybe they're
Yeah, maybe they're just counting it as two separate. Yeah, perhaps. I don't know. I'm just looking at like Cairneth as well, Trilwyn. I don't know. I'm assuming Wales. Yeah, I'm assuming.
yeah. Oh, who knows? Look, I would definitely say if you're listening to this, we're obviously getting way too into the details of it, like these are based upon, it is not an exact replica. I never realized
No,
either how cool the map was with the top of Storen like a stag and the top bit being called the prongs
I
and
know, I know. I'm
very
just appreciating that a lot now.
solid
Um,
imagery.
yeah, it's. I think it's just an easy. It's an accessible world.
Mm,
It's not too big. It's you can get your bearings, even if you don't know the layout of the UK and things, and you're not sure how it all works. You can look at the map, and it's not impossible to work out where they are.
no.
Sometimes it is a bit. I find it's like too much in fantasy settings. So this was tight, and yeah, I enjoyed it.
All right, well, we've talked about your favorite bit for long enough, I think. We should move very swiftly on to my favorite bit and characters. Just such a great band of characters, and with the fact that we don't just follow Kate, we get a whole host of experiences and development and bastards and
Yeah.
all sorts. So I mean, I don't know about you, but I began with obviously Kenzie and Kate. Kenzie's just clearly a cunt from the off. Like,
Yeah. I mean, it was quite obvious she wasn't going to end up with Kenzie. I think that was fairly obvious from the very start. Yeah, the characters were great. I loved the fact it was written in third person, but we still followed well, not each, was it every character or just some? It was a lot of character, to be fair.
yeah, we got
Loved it.
Kaelin. Nope, Callan. We got Callan.
Hmm.
We got Aiden. We got
Hmm.
Kate. We got Kenzie. We got Jamie. We didn't get Tavis.
No, we got Bess though, didn't we?
Yeah, we did
Hmm.
get Bess. And like I
Hmm.
liked Bess, but she wasn't as badass as I thought she was gonna be.
No, I know.
But she definitely has time in the second book to come into her own. So just a quick rundown because I didn't mention it at all in my speedy summary. Bess is the daughter of Lister Burke, who is sort of he's playing both sides, isn't he? He is this sort of head of the political party in Storen, but also at the same time he's heading up the separatists and he sort of calls the shots, but he is sort of a hidden call the shotter. I don't know how else to
Hmm.
say that.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
He's the person who wants independence for perhaps more selfish reasons, but doesn't want to get his hands dirty in
yes.
achieving independence.
I mean, he openly says it towards the end of the book when Aiden comes to talk to him, and he says, I look after my family.
Yeah.
Or is it Callan? Someone comes to talk to him, and he basically says, I look after my family.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're right.
We see them at the end of the book. Aiden's been killed, and oh, such an awful scene.
So is there going to be a sequel? I didn't think so. I didn't realize that. Oh, okay, interesting. That's really
Yeah.
interesting because we knew, well, we kind of say we knew, but I had a feeling we weren't going to get a happy ending because we
No.
know that this is you can probably guess what this story is about. So, very much a commentary on Scottish independence. And we
What?
know that that didn't happen. So, I didn't think that Rebecca did it any differently. I thought, yeah, we're not going to get a magical happy ending here.
For me, it's reminiscent of the French uprisings and the French rebellions and Les Mis because of the barricades and everything
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. No,
but also
totally.
because of the failed rebellion. I think
That's good.
I thought it was just to sort of talk a bit about the Scottish independence. I thought it was a really well done political allegory.
Yeah, I mean, it was very accessible if you don't know anything about it.
Mhm.
And it was interesting to see the push and pull, the dynamics of not everyone has a black and white opinion on it.
Mm.
And there is no dislike or ill will towards the people. It's the people above the people. Everyone is suffering, and it's that side of things. And that's mentioned a lot in the story. It's not simple in that they're against the people.
Yeah.
It's the powers that be, which
Yeah.
is how most people felt about Scottish independence. The English were not the issue,
I don't know.
believe it or not.
Um, which is really interesting because actually we don't get the voice for really anyone of who's in charge, except maybe the brigadier. He gets a bit of the guy who runs the watch. So I wonder in the second book if we'll see the rebellion taken to Queen Anna.
Hmm.
We'll see. I'm not sure. I don't think it needs it necessarily, their own POV, but I do think maybe some sort of tussle with someone a little senior would be good to see. Talking about the radicalization of Kate, I think is something that R.M. Brown does to sort of talk about the book and say, obviously watch how Kate becomes radicalized. And that word radical just always seems to make me think that, or made me think that Kate was going to be more, that Kate was almost going to go the way that Aggie goes towards the end
Hmm.
of the book, where, she's lost Aidan and her sort of hopes were built on that sort of a similar thing to Kate, like the glory and the fairy tale of
Hmm.
Aidan and how if only they'd get the crown to him, if only, he'd be crowned, it would all be fine. And that sort of breaks something in Aggie when he's killed. And then Aggie then just basically goes on this whole, well, she's about to embark on this solo revenge mission where she
Hmm.
starts her own little rebellion and leaves Kate and Callan
Oh,
on
yeah.
their own together. But they also decide to start again.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I liked it was more drip, drip, drip. I mean, Kate has her doubts from the start.
mm,
She's in no way aligned with Kenzie's feelings about independence. She has a strong background of hearing folk tales from her dad. So
yeah,
she's already, I guess, she's got that sense of place and she's loves where she's from and she has pride in that. I like the fact that she kind of gets to see, have her eyes opened a little bit, like the particular scene when they go and buy the hats, and it's like the whole legal tender thing of, which did make me laugh because it is it's such a thing that we try and use Scottish currency in England, and that's the old stereotype of
it's
that's not
legal
legal
tender.
tender. So I knew instantly it was going to happen. As soon as they went in and started talking about currency, I was like, oh, here we go. But I quite enjoyed the fact that she already had those feelings from the beginning, that, we don't see her changing her opinion out and make her out of character. It's still aligned with who she was. And she didn't do it out of falling in love with anyone or, there was nothing like that. She had her own opinions and she went back and forth an awful lot. Like she was not entirely convinced until pretty far into the story.
Yeah, no, and I respected that because I think it's believable, right? Like you mentioned, obviously the first time she sort of, has that moment in Afren. I thought it started earlier than that. I thought it was when she first goes to the doctor's surgery and she realized she has that sort of, I'm not saying that's a moment of realization for her, but she sees a world so different to her own at that point where she goes in and she's trying to help. She's like, her mum is a doctor and she's been priming her to take over. So she goes into the doctor's surgery and sort of in a bid to be like, look, I can help. And they turn her away, despite the fact that they're also turning away patients. And she
Mhm.
helps somebody outside, and they sort of have a riposte of like, oh, there's no way they're gonna, they wouldn't bother helping us or whatever. And
Mhm.
Kate's very much like, oh, and I feel like it's that moment where it's like tick 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 tick, and it starts. It's almost like a timer in her head where
Mhm.
she's then gonna find more things that will,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I think she has her eyes opened to the fact that life is not idyllic outside of Brodick. She's from a very rural, tight-knit community, and essentially she goes to the big city and gets to see how unfair people's lives are.
I think some of the references with Scotland and England, I'm not going to say heavy-handed. I don't mean heavy-handed. I mean, I think, like you said, accessible. Like it's very obvious what we're talking about here. There's no thin veil, and I loved it, but I do think some people will find themselves rubbing up against that, being like, oh, it's too much,
Hmm.
like, or it's too
Hmm.
obvious. Where it's like, yeah, but it's meant to be obvious. That's the point.
It's interesting publishing it now, for
Mm.
sure, because that fire has been lit under a lot of people again. I think it was quiet for a while, and this is obviously starting to stir, especially since I think COVID probably had a lot to do with it and how, decisions that were made were perhaps not always in the best interest of everybody.
Yeah.
So
No.
it is interesting that that was the point in time that this book was published. Um, mm.
I would be curious to maybe talk to Rebecca and sort of see when she wrote it.
Hmm. Mm. Maybe it's been a long project. Maybe there's been bits of it all the way along. I don't know.
Yeah.
When Scottish independence was not agreed and not voted for, a lot of people didn't give up on it. So it's always been kind of bubbling. I mean, we saw a protest last week driving home from the supermarket. There was people standing with banners and things on outside Stirling Castle. So it's still going on. It's very much still happening, but maybe just with not the same level of exposure as it had before.
This book made me want a independent Scotland.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it definitely stoked whatever patriotism I'm allowed to claim from the fact that we've been
Oh,
here.
you were like Jamie. I thought of you like Jamie because Jamie is from the north of Athrun, and I was like, oh, yeah. So that was really, I liked that though. I did like that, and that it, as I say, it wasn't as simplistic as it's Storen versus Athrun.
Mm,
There's fighting. There was infighting within Storen, and I think that's the point that was made particularly well. That not everybody in Scotland wanted to be independent or wants to be independent, so it was handled better, I think, because in some ways, people in Africa and people in England had no skin in the game,
yeah,
didn't really mind. It wasn't going to affect them. So
yeah.
it came across like that in this story that the Afrin's kind of day-to-day citizen wasn't really interested in what was happening in Storen. They, you know,
Not really. I also loved as well, obviously, the inclusion of POC characters, and our Callan is from Ifriga, and him and his family, and sort of the whole thing about like pro-immigration and how Scotland is a very diverse country, and it probably wouldn't be what it is without, that diversity,
mhm, mhm.
especially not Glasgow.
Well, I think it's just the commentary of voting for what Scotland want, isn't it? And what affects the country rather than decisions being made on our behalf.
Yeah.
I think that was done really, really well in lots of ways. So, yeah, I mean, it could have been heavy-handed. Not everyone's going to like it. I'm surprised. We'll talk about reviews in a minute. I can see some people finding this hard to read or just not their thing because of their own political leanings, but I don't know if they'll necessarily find it, to be honest.
Very true. Yeah, no, I think heavy-handed is what people who are being negative will say about it.
Yeah, I agree.
Whereas I think you and I would just say it's not subtle, but it doesn't ever.
No, it's not subtle, but it's wonderfully well written. I had a great time with the writing. I found it really, and we always say accessible, but I don't mean it like simplistic. I just mean that it flowed really nicely
Yeah,
and it tickled something. Sometimes you just read a writing style and you think, oh yeah, I like it. Like I felt like that reading this.
that's it. And I mean, we've come across a lot of books on this podcast where, like, from one end of the scale, we talk about purple prose and like how
Mhm.
sometimes how difficult that is to read and how much that sort of stutters and starts for myself and for you as well. And like, but some people love that. Whereas this, I wouldn't say it's not beautiful. It's really, it just, I don't know. I cannot tell you.
I like writing where it's like not a stare, but I feel like sometimes every word counts. It paints a picture, but it does what it has to do, and it keeps the thing, it keeps the momentum of the story going. And this felt like that to me. There was
Yeah.
a lot of dialogue, and I think that made a lot of sense because it is very character driven, which I know you love, absolutely. Yeah, I would say that you're right, it's not beautiful, but it is beautifully done.
Yeah. But in a way, sometimes beautiful prose, purple prose, loses some of itself by
Yeah.
trying to be too beautiful. But I think it's almost Scotland in a way. Like it is beautiful if only you know where to look.
Oh.
Ah! We. I really just want to talk about Inez.
Ennis. Yeah.
Innes.
Hmm.
But it's spelt with an E.
No, Ennis. Ennis. Yes.
Fine.
I have a family friend called Ennis, so I do know that one. Yeah.
Innes.
Mhm.
I loved him. He was my favorite character, and I'm so excited for book two because I want to see what happens to him.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a bit. I'm excited because I honestly did not think that this was going to have a sequel. There were so many characters that I was like, oh, I really want to know more about them. But if this is all I get, this is all I get. But yeah, Ennis will be the one because he is helping them at the end.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, helps them all the way through, right? You can
mm,
tell when you first meet him, and sort of they've just gotten to the city, and Inez sort of manages to whisk Kenzie away and leaves Kate very much by herself to meet Bram. Oh,
that was so sad, and I
I-
didn't see it coming, to be
no.
honest. I kind of did see her having her doubts about him, but I actually thought that he would lead her to the rebellion. I didn't think he was going to be killed.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be her gateway in, and turns out he's not actually a separatist. He just makes his own booze, which is not a crime. I did wonder, you know how there was like obviously a body under a blanket. I thought it was going to be the young lad that had brought the bottles, and like Bram
Yeah.
was actually alive. And then when she got to the Unna town, he was going to be there, and then that
Hmm.
was gonna be oh, but no.
So sad. And then horrible in that they've basically framed him by saying, oh, yeah, he attacked us and we found this flag on his person when they didn't. Oh,
And look, the worst thing about it is obviously Kate has these horrible feelings of guilt and everything. And she should, because fucking hell. Ah! And I know where it comes from, and I know that Aggie's really lovely about it and says we've all made mistakes and everything. But I just wanted to like shake her and be like,
no.
no!
Especially because I just didn't think she was, I don't know, I didn't think that was in character for her at that point. I felt like she was still having her doubts, but I wouldn't have thought she would have grasped somebody in.
I think I think from her point of view, at least what I think I got was that she's doing it to get Kenzie's approval.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
And it's not necessarily, it's, yeah, it's definitely done in a way to be like, oh, look, no, like we love each other, we can trust each other, like I can
Hmm.
tell him this. And she's horrified when she realizes that he's not the man I think she thinks he's supposed to be. So,
Yeah, but I did have a bit of an issue with it, and I think that you're supposed to because you're supposed to feel that guilt that she feels,
hmm.
because she doesn't think for a minute that if he's found to be a separatist, he isn't going to be killed because we've been told multiple times by this point that they're going to go up against a firing squad.
Yeah,
So
she says I thought you'd have a trial, and I was just like, Come on," like
he
And
didn't.
I wonder whether that's a metaphor for her sort of Bram is a metaphor for her innocence, and then you know,
Yeah.
you need
Once that they need a catalyst, didn't they? Because she runs away and she does something hugely out of character and gets on a train and run and leaves. And there had to be something to kickstart that, I think, and it had to be huge. So this is what it was. But it just felt a little bit hard to kind of get my head around why she did it. Like when she did it, I was like, oh, why?
Oh, yeah, just don't know.
But then
Like,
it made it really interesting because there were a couple of times reading the story, I thought, is she going to betray them? Like, is she going to realize this is too much and she doesn't want to be part of it anymore and it's too risky and she's got a really comfortable life with Kenzie? She is just going to turn around and say, help, no, I was kidnapped. I don't want anything to do with this.
yeah, so maybe that's done purposefully for us to be like, wait, that seems a little out of character for our heroine.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
maybe you're right, that's done so that we never truly know. Almost
No.
not necessarily an unreliable narrator because it's in third person, but an unreliable hero.
Yes, I think so. Because I don't think she knows, does she? I don't think she truly knows where her loyalties lie. So actually, she does second guess herself a lot. In fact, there's a couple of times she does say, am I going to turn them in? Am I going to run away?
Yeah.
Like she's constantly doubting herself and her decisions.
Which, look, I obviously hated Kate for, but also I loved because it made the whole story so much more believable. Like there are
Mhm.
so many fucking romanticides and fantasies and all sorts where the first person, the heroine comes upon something and she becomes radicalized. And yes, I'm air quoting it because it's not done half as well as it's done here, but also because it's done within the blink of an eye. She believes
Exactly.
whatever they're telling her, and she's just they're just like, oh yeah, no, I'm part of the rebellion now. I'm head of the rebellion, and you're just like, how has this happened? And we let it get away
Yeah.
let them get away with it because we fucking love to read stuff like that, but it's just not right.
No. No, you're totally right. And this was done with a lot more sophistication, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, agreed. Some reviews, madam?
Yes, please.
Lovely. Would you like to start with the ones or the fives?
Do you know, just because I don't think there will be that many, I'll go with a 1 star. I'm not to say that people will not dislike it and there might be criticisms about it, but 1 star is scathing.
Yeah, I mean, there are two one stars on Goodreads. Bearing in mind,
Okay.
there's not a lot of ratings as many of the other books we've written. Sorry, we've written. Lol. They're ours now. We've read. But this is what you get with indie publishers and indie authors. Like, got to get
Hmm.
out there. Got to review, guys. Got to review. We should both leave
Hmm.
reviews after this as a blind leading the blind type thing. Yeah, two one stars. One just says DNF, the other says nothing. Again, we know
Oh,
policy. If you DNF, I don't think you should be allowed to leave a 1 star review.
and any indication of when the DNF happened? No. Oh,
Literally those three
okay.
letters. The only other review I could find that was at least semi sort of negative, not that we want to dwell on that, 2.5 star. They start by saying solid prose and a decent political allegory, which is nice, fine. But they then start to say that the story was bogged down by an outstandingly fickle and frustratingly naive main character.
No.
But so yeah, fine. You don't have to like the hero
No.
to like the story. And I
Do you
find
know though, I think that people are so used to that now that you do need to. It's like if I don't like the main character, then the story isn't an effective story. And I don't think either of us would have picked Kate as our favorite character. She frustrated the life out of me multiple times in the book, but everything else was solid, and there were so many characters I did love.
oh
So
yeah, I think out of our little band of separatists, Jamie and Callan were my favorites.
I loved Callan. I did love Aggie.
But
Yeah.
it's not that I didn't love Aggie. I just out of in terms of like development and character, I was a bit like, oh no, I liked Jamie's story and I liked Callan's story.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think Callum was my favorite. I was like really rooting for Callan at the end. I was worried for him.
I, I will admit though, my heart broke when Ellen was killed.
I know.
Or is it Elsie?
Elsie was killed. Who else was killed? There's quite a few people that were killed. Elsie was killed.
Tavis was
Aiden was
killed.
killed.
Tavis.
Tavis was killed.
After he just helped Jamie get her powers back.
I know. It was so sad.
But yeah, no, Elsie
That
for
was it, wasn't it? Yeah. Hmm.
Elsie for me was just like obviously yeah, thinking about it, potentially a character that Rebecca's written just to then kill her to have it be sad. And I respect it. You've got to. There's got to be sacrificial lambs.
Yeah.
Bram, obviously, we forgot to mention, but we talked about him before. Elsie's this real, like, buzzy, chirpy character who's not really, like, there for the plot, but she's there, like, oh, did you get the crown? Oh, we're rebelling, are we?
Yeah.
Oh,
She's a little
yeah.
hype guy in the back. Yeah, yeah,
So sad to have that just snuffed out without even
yeah.
so
Hmm.
much as a sort of a and I think she says like Kenzie kills her and so she's written as like she stares up at him glassy eyed and I had to go
Mm.
back to make sure that she was dead because they talk
Yeah.
about walking through her blood and I was like
Mm.
oh my God what sorry when did he kill her and I was like oh cool it was just I was like cool now my life is over and this is really sad so
It's really sad. Really sad. Aiden's death was a gut punch.
oh,
Ooh.
not even like the shot, I was like, okay, fine, he's been shot. This isn't the worst thing. But when he looks up and he's looking at Andrus, or the ghost of Andrus that he at least sees, whether it's supernatural, whether it's just in his head, and he says, "Are you proud?"
Uh, uh, uh. Yeah. I know we had such a lovely couple of chapters of an insight into him and Beth's relationship and what he wanted out of it and the fact he was quite reluctant to be this figurehead and was always like, I want people to come to me because they want to come to me and they want me to be I don't want to be a tyrant. And I was like, oh, you're dead. You're just too pure for this.
You sweet little baby angel. Yeah,
Yes.
tiny little soft boy.
Mhm.
Back to the review. Sorry.
Mhm.
Cringe-inducing heavy-handedness in the allegory department. There it is.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
I don't agree, but fine. Moving on very quickly. We've said what we want to say about that. Unsatisfying supernatural elements and an ending that is almost nakedly holding out for a sequel rather than committing to being a standalone. That's mean.
Is it? This is the thing though. Like, did it ever say it was a standalone? I don't know.
No, because
No,
I've watched a few TikToks by Rebecca, and she specifically says, "Oh, I'm trying. It's difficult marketing the first book whilst also having to write the second."
the second one, right? Okay, so
I don't understand what if it's not labeled as a standalone, you cannot punish it for not being a standalone.
no, and that almost insinuates that she's written it that way to be like I'm entitled to a sequel. Really, I've
Yeah.
written it to have a sequel, and therefore it must be picked up. But surely that's not. It's an independently published book. Like I just don't understand where that criticism would even come from.
Yeah, so I think fuck off, basically.
Let's look at the 5 stars.
Yes, let's do that. Without a doubt, my book of the year, and one that I will no doubt come back to time and time again. Fast pace, so impactful, the comparisons between Storren and real life Scotland, and yet it didn't rip you out of the story. That's an interesting one. Sort of an antithesis of the one that suggests that the things were heavy-handed. The fact that you got
Mm.
to stay within the story whilst also sort of being given these real life comparisons.
I think it was just different enough that you weren't spending all your time thinking, okay, so where is that place in real life? Who is that person supposed to be in real life? It
Yeah.
wasn't done in that sense. So it was, yeah, it was just different enough.
I've been left with a deep heartache in my heart, and I can't wait for the sequel. And I
Mm.
also love the inclusion of POC characters. Yeah, perfect.
Good. Great. Yeah, I agree with
Absolutely.
all of that.
Fantastic deal demonstrating just how to explore complex and serious themes in a fun, exciting read that you don't want to put down. I like that.
I
That's
like
I
that.
we haven't talked about is obviously the fact that these themes are quite heavy, not necessarily in terms of like trigger warnings or suffering, but like quite in-depth political
Mhm.
ideas or ideals and sort of the way that people, it's tough, right? Because the talk of an independent Scotland is a difficult one. Like it's and I'm please don't come for me, Scottish people who are listening to this. I don't mean it in a sense that I don't think any Scotland should be free or whatever. More in a sense that like I would seriously consider voting independence if because we've been burned before, right? The whole fucking UK has been burned with Brexit. So now I'm thinking to myself, I want you to give me a full plan of what's going to happen should
Mhm.
Scotland's economy no longer be tied.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's not an easy topic to talk about. It's a very divisive topic. I mean, when independence was voted against, it was only 55% of the voters that voted that way. So it was not a landslide decision by the Scottish people, and I think that's why there's still that unrest still so prevalent. So it isn't an easy one. I think it was written to be extremely accessible. I like the fact that it was a YA book and it didn't shy away from difficult topics, but as you say, not particularly violent topics or triggering topics as such. It was more complex topics that, and actually, I don't think, and people will probably disagree with me if you've read this, I don't think it was screaming from the rafters that independence is the right decision necessarily. I think it was definitely showing you why some people have their doubts about that and why it can divide families, friendship groups. Like, not everybody is saying the same thing in the same circles.
Yeah,
So it
no.
was done really well.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, and I think there was definitely a sort of an undercurrent of things have to change,
Hmm.
but not necessarily, and that was very much done throughout by being like, no, it's not for me, it's for Storin, or what are this person's motivations? Oh, it's for them, and you sort of see from different sides the true sort of dreamers of for
Mhm.
story, not dreaming in a bad way, obviously, but then also
Mm.
who are trying to be more practical about it, and then the
Yes.
people that are sort of in the middle. Like I'd probably class Callan as
Hmm. Hmm.
middle. You know, he has this dream, but also he's very practical about it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I thought he was a really great sort of mix of the two.
Hmm. I like the fact that they talked about the resources and the fact that the resources are being stolen and
Yeah.
the peat. And I'm interested to see how that's handled in the second book. Is it going to be that yes, 100% Storing can be independent and they can be financially independent, or is there going to be conversation around is that possible the way things are currently, or do they have to have more considerations? Is there a middle ground that could be reached?
Mm.
So I like the fact it's not there is only one answer and this is the right answer and this is what I want you to think reading this book. It's not done in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why maybe we think it's not as heavy-handed as
Yes.
considered.
Oh, I think it could be way more so. Way more so. They could be really villainizing the alternative. She doesn't, in my opinion.
No, no, it's really well done. I think the blame is placed on the right characters in the
Yes.
story. And then I also think we talk about this a lot. There's no pantomime villain in this. Like
Mhm.
Kenzie sometimes goes that way, but then I think he pulls it back with this sort of like definitely the scene where Kate is in jail and he sort of tries to reach through the bars to her. He is trying to reach her, not physically and on a different
Hmm.
level
Hmm.
of
Yeah,
being
yeah.
like, come
Some
on.
of it was a bit the other way for me. Like I would have preferred it if there had been true feelings and true love from him, but he was conflicted because of her beliefs. I felt like when he called her a bitch at one point, I was a bit like, oh, now we're going into pantomime villain territory now. It's
That's it.
like,
Yeah,
oh.
there were a few bits where, he raises his hand and that's quite early on and I was a bit like,
Mhm.
fuck, Kenzie. But then he never goes there again until the very end where he does. He calls her a traitorous bitch.
Mm.
And he says
Yeah,
that's
and I
the
get that. And if it had been that way all the way through, maybe it would be 2-1 no. So maybe you could argue that. But it just felt a little bit like, what can we do to make people really dislike this character? And actually, in some ways, I don't know if he necessarily had to be disliked that much. It could have just been he's got his own beliefs, he's got his own ambitions. And although they are very selfish, and he's doing it for the wrong reasons, we could argue, I don't know why he had to call her a bitch and make it too
Yeah,
obvious.
yeah. Yeah. Maybe
But
he
fuck him anyway.
maybe he just fuck him. I mean he just needed irredeemable moment for it to be like, we've got these moments all the way through that's been put through of like, oh, maybe he does love her, maybe he'll come round, and then it's sort of like, no, we end book one, he's not coming back from this now.
Mm-mm.
He's standing too hard on this ground.
Mhm.
So, but then he sees her at the end. They do cross paths, like it very much, and he does nothing. He walks away. So interesting. There's another review mentions that the selection of characters the characters themselves drive the narrative,
Mhm.
with plenty of intrigue, twists, and rousing moments which track a band of rebels' plight and fight for freedom.
Lovely. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I totally got it. I really enjoyed the pacing. There was maybe one or two times where I was kind of like, oh, we're going somewhere else, we're doing something else, but it didn't feel too much like we're ticking things off the list the way quest stories sometimes can feel.
Yeah, I definitely thought getting through, I was like, okay, right, so the whole Crown saga within that's going to be the big quest, but when actually it wasn't, it was more that was only just like the mini quest before the big thing. I'm glad, to be
Yeah.
fair, I wasn't disappointed. I was glad that we'd gotten more than that. Nice. It's what we were talking about with I don't know whether we talked about it on here or we talked about it together. The importance of a duology is to answer lots of questions in book one, but then also have a couple of questions again because I feel like they tied off a lot of loops like the first rebellion failed, such and such is dead, this is happening. But then they set up so beautifully for book two that I think, yeah, it's going to be, if it is a duology, I suspect it will be. It could be a trilogy, who knows? But yes, no, I think it's going to be really good for book two.
And I think it will be interesting in book two where it will sort of deviate from what we know has happened. So we
Mm,
know that independence has failed, if you like,
Yeah,
And it's like we've got to that point. So we've kind of caught up with ourselves, if you like. We're at the same place we are right now. What's going to happen in book two? How are we going to get from the where we are at the moment to potentially, presumably, an independent story,
yeah.
I guess.
Fingers crossed. The relationship. Normally we talk about the sex, but there isn't any sex. And I didn't feel like it was lesser because of that. I don't think there needed to be the pay. I think for me the
No.
payoff was the kiss, right?
Hmm.
Um, Obviously I hated the miscommunication towards the like not miscommunicate the they have this kiss, Kate and Aggie, and it's been building up for so long and it's like
Hmm.
it's so beautifully done. And then Kate has this sort of thought of like Kenzie and she's like, no, and Aggie's like, oh, okay then, cool.
Mm.
And then they do not talk about it.
Again, though, so different from the typical romantasy offerings.
Yeah.
I thought it was really refreshing. And I actually think when I think, do get together in book two, it's going to be even better as a result of this one. I mean, this is the slowest of slow burns. So if you like a slow burn, I would say this is right up your street.
Yeah, and I think what's nice about it is if we hadn't have read as many books as you and I have, I don't think I'd know that Aggie's the intended uh,
No, no,
love.
I don't think so.
And obviously it's marketed as sapphic, so that's a clue as well. But I think, and I'm not suggesting that there's no romance or there's no like tension or whatever there is, but the whole situation's tense, right? Like she doesn't know who to trust. They don't know if they trust her. I love the
Yeah.
scene where it's the night before the rebellion or the barricade revolution, and they go into the inn and she finds the sort of the door and they go up and they talk together and she touches her hand and it's just like oh
It
uh,
was very cute. Like it was very sweet. And yeah, it was I liked it, but I don't think it's for everybody. I think that for some people there's not enough romance in there. Don't go into the book thinking you're reading a romantasy. It's not that kind of book at all.
it's very akin to what we say about Cruel Prince or The Folk of the Air is that these are not romantasy novels. There's more of a romance in Cruel Prince, I
I
would
would say so. So even
uh,
if you criticism, a lot of people say that's not enough romance for you. So if that's not, this isn't.
what I would at least very much say is that both characters very much like each other as opposed to the Cruel Prince and their
Mhm.
hatred of each other. But, you know, I just think, like you said, the payoff in book two is going to be really good. And it can only strengthen the relationship. I love a slow burn, so there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that.
And I wouldn't have wanted her to start up anything with Aggie when she still has unresolved feelings and thoughts about Kenzie. I need her to really come to terms with him and how she feels about him first, or else I don't want them to have a relationship yet.
Yeah, I also think maybe that's a reason as to why we have this big blowout with Kenzie with the calling of the bitch. Like he's irredeemable. Like, and just another reason for her to be able to move on
Hmm.
and move past him. Yeah.
Hmm.
If I didn't know it was Sapphic and I was still like, Innes? Maybe? Because
Mm.
they've got a bit of tension, but then also I'm in my own head, I'm like slamming my own head, being like, stop it, Liv, stop being so fucking heteronormative and putting boys and girls together. They can be
I
friends,
know.
god damn it.
I know, but it's just it's really interestingly done because there's a constant push-pull in her feelings towards Aggie. She's intrigued by her, and at the start, and finds her really compelling, and it's like, ooh, like I shouldn't be thinking like this, and I like those parts of it, but
Hmm.
she still has definitely feelings for Kenzie because
Yeah,
they've been together for a really long time. They were due to be married. It was all kind of set out for her. I think she mentioned a beautiful, oh, it was stunning at one point about the path and all the stepping stones, and all she had to do was walk across the stones, and then basically they'd all been scattered now. And it was, yeah, that was gorgeous. So I like the fact that there's still a little bit of uncertainty around what's going to happen.
that's again, it's just realistic. It's not a oh, and I've been with him for 6 days and I'm hopelessly in love with him, which again
Mhm.
has its own place. It's its
When
place.
you need to read that kind of book, yes, it definitely does.
But this just gives you such a more human experience
Mhm.
that you can
Mhm.
relate to, and that just keeps you sucked into the story much better. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm. Agreed.
100%. I don't think we have an ick.
No, no X from me. We've
Uh,
talked about some things that maybe could have been icky, I
mhm.
think. And some people found them a bit heavy-handed and maybe it's something that would pull them from the story, but we didn't personally feel that way.
No, I'd like to think that most of the people who listen to this podcast are here because they've got a similar sort of taste in books to us, or they like to read a wide range, or maybe they don't. Whatever. All's fine. Everything's fine, guys. Don't leave. But yeah, I don't think anyone else would read this thinking it was potentially heavy-handed. At least anyone who's listening to us now.
Mm.
If we're wrong, comment and tell us. We love
Yeah,
being wrong because it means engagement. Final thoughts.
loved it.
Yeah, great.
Really loved it.
It was really nice to read this kind of book and be happy with it and not necessarily, and also spend the last hour and a bit just not having to talk about tropes.
I
Uh,
know, and not having to say our usual line of they've all got a place and that's why we love stories, la 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 la. La." Yeah, because although we say that every time, it does get a bit tired. So it was very refreshing, really different, and still had all the elements that I love about fantasy.
well done, R.M. Brown.
Hmm,
And
smashed it.
we await the sequel.
We
Uh,
do. And I'm really excited because I didn't even know there was one. So very
let's
excited.
let's just talk about that for a couple of minutes. What about that end doesn't make you think there's going to be a
I
second?
don't know. I just thought maybe it is a commentary on the fact that it didn't happen, and that's what she's
Oh,
trying to say. So,
wow, okay, okay. Just tell her, just message her and be like, look, you don't have to bother. I think it ends really well.
no, you do, because I want to know how it works out. And there's so many great characters that I want to hear about again. But
Mm.
yeah, at the end, I was like, oh,
Do you, yeah. Do you think in book two, and we've touched a little bit on what we might expect or what we might hope, do you think we will travel more into Afren, or do you think
yes,
interesting. I'm
a
wondering,
little bit. I also think there is going to be that kind of conversation around is it just as simple as the good guys want independence and the bad guys don't, and is it something that can be achieved? I think she's going to do a little bit about that and how can it be achieved? And I'm really interested.
I'm wondering whether not necessarily Aggie becomes the villain, but more Aggie might have this splinter group of separatists who are more radical.
Yes, I think you're totally right. I think she's driven by rage. She has lost all the things that were keeping her tethered to her cause. And I think she's gone to find people that are really far one other way.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I mean,
it'll
we
be bringing her back from that, I think.
Yeah, we haven't touched on this at all, and we should really apologize because it is quite a key bit. But the duality of Addie as Aggie and the differences between herself and the fox, and
Hmm.
she sees that in herself and the dream while she's not well, and like but then also Kate sees it in her as well, and so
Hmm.
much so I was like, is she possessed?
I
Like
know.
but then obviously it's sort of dripped in, and then you get this element of like, no, it's just two real sides of her personality warring
Hmm.
at what is right or what they
I
think is
know, I
right.
know. I think I was like thinking again that kind of typical fantasy thing where it's like, oh, is it magical? Is the fox
Yeah,
possessing her or a part of her that is sentient? But then no, it's just that you're right. She has this duality about her and she's not quite sure what way that's going to land. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the second book.
yeah. Well, I think one of the last things we hear the fox sort of say within Aggie's mind is "trust me" or
Hmm.
something, and then that helps them. That helps, but then it's also sort of like, okay, who's riding the carcass? Which one of you's in charge here?
And I think she needs it, doesn't she? She says that like without the fox, what am I? What have I got if I don't have that sense of I guess like she kind of puts on I like that, like she puts on a stronger accent and things as well. So it's like, can she come to terms with what who she really is unless it's extreme,
Yeah,
you
no, absolutely. We should have talked about that before. Sorry, guys. Um, I would highly recommend this to people, and if it's on your TBR and you said, "Oh yeah, you've seen one of our RM Brown's amazing videos," and you said to yourself, "Yeah, that looks like a piece of meat," move it up.
Oh yeah, yeah, go for it. It's a great read. And if you like fantasy and you want to read something just a little bit different, then for sure.
Yeah, especially in this day and age where everything, you feel like nothing is unique anymore, and a lot of tropes are have their place. Oh no, I've said it. No. Um,
Oh.
but yeah, no, definitely, I completely agree. Yeah, something different, absolutely.
Mhm.
Oh, if you want to read something similar to this, I would definitely say Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb because I'm breathing. But also it has a similar sort of slow burn character, similar sort of really well done setting. It's not a real setting, but it's done so beautifully as well.
We said God Killer already, but we
Oh,
always say it.
yeah, God Killer, absolutely. I'm trying to think of books on Scotland, but I don't have as many as I need. This has definitely inspired me
Me too.
to go and have a look. Maybe is it Kirsten White has yeah, the Guinevere deception. That feels
Ooh,
a little bit or is wait, maybe that's not the first one. It's King Arthur-y, so maybe that's
cool.
where I'm getting it from in so it's not really Scottish but old Avalon, etc. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the tie I'm making there, but who knows? Maybe they're not exactly the same. I definitely say the Guinevere Deception, that lot, they're not they're a bit more YA, bit more younger YA
hmm
for sure.
I think the fact that we can't think of any just really speaks to the fact that we need to be looking for more books. I know that Waterstones, probably in all Scottish towns and cities, have a Scottish authors
Mm,
section, typically crime, I
mm,
would say. So it was really refreshing to read a fantasy, and I will be definitely looking out for more.
absolutely. Maybe Rebecca herself can tell us of some that she's maybe
Mm.
read and instead potentially inspired this perhaps.
Yeah, great.
Join us next week where we will be reading what, Amy?
Oh, it's another biggie. It's Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab.
Gotta
We're
be
getting involved. We have to. We're going to read it anyway, so we might as well read it for the podcast.
absolutely. We're gonna read it, so we might as well tell you if you should read it.
That's it.
That, that's the whole point of the podcast.
That's what we're here for.
Yes, we are fully back into the swing. Yeah, look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much for listening.
Happy reading.